Welcome to the Kicks Factory. I am your host, Omar Bailey, footwear design, entrepreneur, and creator. But this show isn't about me. This show was created to tell you stories of those who are doing extraordinary things in the sneaker game. We're also here to celebrate and discuss footwear design and creation with the creators themselves. We are in for a very, very special treat today, and taking a slightly different approach from our shows before in the past. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our guest today. I got some notes in front of me here, so I want to make sure I don't get this wrong with all his trophies in the background right now. 6-time MLB All-Star, 3-time Silver Slugger Award winner, and of course, the famous bat flip, 18-year career playing for the Baltimore Orioles, Kansas City Royals, the Tampa Bay Rays, Pittsburgh Pirates, and of course, the Toronto Blue Jays, with a little stint in New York playing for the New York Mets, I believe, as well. No other than Joey Bats himself, Jose Bautista. Welcome to the show, Jose. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Thanks for thinking of me, and let's have some fun today.
Of course. Funny thing, I had an opportunity to meet Chris Bosch once, and I asked him, I said, how's retired life going? And he looked at me and said, I ain't retired yet. So I wanted to ask you, have you officially retired, or has that not happened just yet?
I haven't announced anything. I haven't officially retired.
Okay.
But yeah, my expectations are that most likely I won't be back playing, even though I would love to. I just feel like that's where my situation is at right now. When you put the backdrop of where the industry is going,
right?
So I'm realistic about it, and I'm at peace with it. I had a very long run and a very satisfactory career, and I'm happy and busy being a dad. So
awesome.
it's that time of life for me right now, and focus on other things to come. So we'll see what happens with my time on a day-to-day basis. But right now, just spending a lot of time with family. As a professional athlete, you get to sacrifice a lot of that. So now I'm making more for it.
Of course. No, that's great. And how's the last year or so been for you, just with COVID and everything going on? Obviously, you said spending time with the family, so that's clearly very important. But just what's that been like for you, just with everything going on?
Yeah, COVID's been a roller coaster, just like for everybody else. It has helped in the family sense, because now you get to be cooped up and spending more time with your family. So that's one of the few positives. But it's been strange. A lot of uncertainty at first, a lot of fear, not knowing what's going to happen. How is this going to affect us? Is our life going to change permanently? Some things are becoming more clear now. So everybody's just kind of dealing with it, and I'm no different. So just trying to be careful, be safe for myself and everybody else. So that's about it. Just trying to stay away from what the experts say are dangerous activities, and just focused on a couple of little personal projects. That's about it.
Okay, great. Well, hopefully you'll be able to tell us a little bit more about that later when we get towards the end of the show. I'd love to hear about some of the exciting things that you're working on. So let me jump right into it, our history and the way that we met. People ask me all the time, like, how do you get in contact with professional athletes when they're looking for, when they're looking to do shoes and whatnot? And, the way that I remember it is that I just got a random phone call from you one day. And you hit me up. I think you knew a little bit about some of the past history that I had working with Gary Sheffield and some other pro MLB players and developing baseball cleats. And I remember you called, and it was like I think a week before spring training, and you were like, and this is just people don't know like how the shoe business works. You're like, hey, I want to design and create my own cleat, and I want it by opening day. And I was just like, man, that's really ambitious, but I don't know how possible that is. But you were such a gentleman, about it, and wanting to learn and understand that process. and so it was funny, but just to take a step backwards and starting from the beginning. You're from the Dominican Republic. You know, everyone knows that's or at least if you follow baseball, it's a hotbed for developing and producing baseball players. Can you tell me a little bit about what that was like, you know, growing up there?
Yeah, and to be fair, I had kind of a different background than most Dominican players, you know, and
Okay.
you're right about that. It's a hotbed for baseball because it is the sport. It's the only sport that every kid wants to play. We all grow up, and it's kind of like our goal to become a professional baseball player.
Mm-hmm.
But the majority of those kids come from, you know, different socioeconomic background. I was fortunate enough to have both my parents go to college and be professional,
Wow.
which is a little different than most Dominican baseball players. So I was, you know, growing up, my childhood was more like just a regular kid in the States, you know,
Yeah.
watching cable TV and playing with my friends. And I suppose most of the other kids don't have it as comfortable. So that makes them hungrier, and that makes them see baseball as a way out, which
Yeah.
is why the whole families, once you have or identify that one of your little boys has talent and the ability to play the sport, it's like every ounce of the collective effort gets put into, okay, let's see if he can make it.
Right.
Let's help him in any way that we can
Mm.
to enable him to hopefully get that big contract and get our whole family out of poverty. My
Mm.
love for the game came from just that. I
Okay.
just fell in love with the game at 2 years old, and I saw it as a recreational thing, but I became better at it. And from then on, you know, it was kind of like on my mind. It's like my goal and my dream as a little boy to become a professional baseball player.
Wow. No, that's great. You're listening to the Kicks Factory show. I am here with Jose Bautista. So with that said, that's interesting because I didn't know that. You know, like I'm a big it just reminded me of, you know, I'm a big tennis fan, and Rafa Nadal is one of my favorite tennis players. And it sounded like he had like a similar sort of upbringing as well, where he came from, you know, a sort of family that was educated, and I think he had a couple of professional athletes already in the family. It sounds, you know, like a sort of a similar story, you know, with you, where, you know, it wasn't as much a way out. It was more for you just to be able to focus on the passion, you know, of the game. You know, like where did that, like, is that, so I'm guessing that your family didn't force baseball on you. It was just something that just happened, or and how did you build that love, you know, for the game? Were you watching a lot, just playing with your friends? Like, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it all started with, you know, I was young enough that, to be quite honest, the first step of how it happened, I don't recall. But the first thing I remember is basically forcing my dad every time he came back from work
Yeah.
to go. We lived in an apartment complex, to go down to like the little social area or
Mm.
playground and just toss me balls for like an hour straight. And I mean,
Mm.
I'm 4 years old with a plastic, you know, football bat, and he's got a bucket of plastic balls, and he's just tossing them one after the other for like an hour straight. That's the first thing I remember.
Yeah.
And you know, that may have created a lasting memory and engagement and connection to the game. So, but from then on out, when, like I said, I started playing and became a little bit better, I started playing with and against those kids that saw baseball and had a different relationship with it as the way
Right.
out.
Right.
And as you know, it's a different structure of the game and the amateur level than in the States. It's not like this recreational, you know, just, we do have them as well. But on top of the recreational, you know, everybody gets a medal kind of teams that everybody plays in, there's
Mm.
an underlying also system of super ultra competitive,
Yeah.
you know, playing. And
Right.
if you start, you know, excelling at the let's have fun games, then you get kind of pulled by the coaches on the ultra competitive, and that's where I got exposed to, like, you know, I guess I would compare it to Rucker Park in New York, you
Yeah.
know,
Exactly.
basketball, that type of
Right.
environment where, you know, as 8, 10, 12-year-old kids are playing, there's
Mm.
a bunch of people in the stands, even betting like not huge like bets and not taking lines and not officially, but like betting beers against, one another, because they are true fans of the kids that are playing, and you go consistently to the same venues and they get to know who you are. So it was crazy, and it was added importance to playing those games because you didn't want to lose because of pride, but on top of it, that these guys are over there talking smack, and they're respectful. They treat kids as they are kids, but there was that bickering in the background between them. This guy's better than that guy, and we're gonna kick your butt today, and whatever. That's kind of how I grew up playing the game.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that reference that you made too about Rucker Park. That like makes total sense. Like you said, it's like you have to play with the best in order to be the best. And by being around that hunger and that drive of those other people, it made you want it just as bad or even more. And you were able to have a bar to sort of compare yourself against too, which is great to hear. That's that's
the difference, right? I would go back to them, play with my friends from school and other places, and I would be picking up aspects of the game they've never been exposed to.
Right.
And that would make me even excel when I played against them even more.
That's awesome. That's your IQ is just like that much higher. It's amazing. I love hearing those stories because it really does make those things make a massive difference. That's great. Thank you for sharing sharing that with us. We're going to take a little bit of a break and pay some bills. But when we come back, we'll jump into, we'll continue our conversation with Jose Bautista. So you're listening to the Kicks Factory Show, and we'll be back in a minute.
Welcome back to another episode of Sell or Fail.
Your money has to work for you.
We want to talk about from the nitty to the gritty, where if you ain't selling,
you failing.
If you crushing sales at any level, you've thought about writing a book.
Stay on point like a javelin and sharper than a Ginsu's knife.
A type or B, sales is the great equalizer.
And if you ain't selling, you failing. Let's get this money. On this podcast, if you don't sell, you do what, William?
You fail.
That's all it is to it.
That ice cream ain't gonna sell itself.
Let's make it happen.
Car sales is kind of like the foundation of sales, if you will.
Yeah. This is Sell or Fail. We'll be right back at you.
Kadzukian. Check out all your Kadzukian favorites now. Download the Kadzukian app, available on Android and iOS.
Welcome back to the Kicks Factory Show. I'm your host, Omar Bailey, and I'm here with guest Jose Bautista. So, one of my good friends played professional football for about 9 years, and he would tell me, he played running back, and he would tell me all the time about his, the stories of how hard he did have to work as a kid to get there. And I know we talked a little bit about that in the first part of the show, but I feel like you're also being a little humble about it as well. And I want to hear some of the stories of some of the drills and things that you were really going through in order to to really excel. And also another question I have for you is, at what age did you realize that you actually had a shot at taking it to the next level? Or was that even on your radar? Was it something you were thinking about? Did it just happen? Tell me a little bit about those things.
Yeah, I mean, it was always my dream and my goal, and I wanted to, but to be quite honest, I was a little bit undersized. I kind of was a late bloomer physically, so I was like the short, little, fast guy, but I played well. I had the skill. And I always played with older guys who made me even seem smaller than what I was. But that helped me. When I went back and played with the kids my own age, then that made me better. But around age 12, 13 is where coaches started talking to my dad and were like, he's got some skill. Maybe he can turn into something. You guys should really try to focus on, dedicating more time to the sport in things like working hard and finding, better medical care, nutritionists and stuff like that. And that's when, it wasn't like today. You don't have this truly specialized like trainers and nutritionists and stuff like that. But I was a little undersized, went to endocrinologist. They recommended some stuff. But the training is where now my dad was on a search for really, really good baseball coaches for kids my age. And that's where I started, busting my butt and sacrificing other stuff like time with my friends. There's definitely not enough time in the day to be able to do your schoolwork. And on top of that, train and work as hard at baseball as I was, because now my goal is starting to shift from just a dream to, okay, I have to take action into developing a game plan to achieve that goal. And I'm the right age, but when you're 8 and 9 years old, nobody's going to make you train like a pro. In baseball, it starts a little later. And in other sports, it starts that early, like in soccer, but in baseball, it starts a little later. So when I hit that age, I started doing training and stuff like speed agility drills and just baseball specific training for 2 or 3 hours a day. And I would come back and talk to my friends that were just, doing their thing and living childhood, and compare, our lifestyles. And it was like night and day. But I put in the work and it ended up paying off.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And who were some of the players you were looking up to at that time when you were growing up?
Oh, growing up, my idol was Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah.
In baseball, for sure. In basketball, obviously Michael Jordan. That was my age. The player that was the guy when I was growing up. But in baseball, guys like Ken Griffey Jr. and specifically Dominican guys. Tony Fernandez was a guy playing for actually Toronto, which was a team that I ended up playing for a long time. That was just silky smooth at shortstop. I wanted to play shortstop growing up. That I became an outfielder, but he was just the guy in the Dominican that had all the tools, and that's the guy I truly followed. But as far as baseball guys from the U.S., Kenny Lofton, Marquise Grissom, Ken Griffey Jr. Those were my guys back in the day.
Oh man, Kenny Lofton, man, scaling those walls in center field back in Cleveland. I remember watching those games, man. That was awesome. Those are some, and then of course Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, you can't the sweetest swing ever, right? Like just pretty to watch. That's amazing. So in 2000, you get drafted. For those listening to the show, unlike basketball or football, where you go right in, you have to pay your dues a little bit and go through the minor league system in order to work your way up to the majors. Can you talk a little bit about, first of all, what it felt like to get drafted, and then two, talk us a little bit about the minors and what that was like?
Well, getting drafted is kind of like, your dream started to become real, right? So you put in the work. So my first stepping stone towards realizing stuff was getting my college scholarship. I was trying to sign to a professional contract out of the Dominican when I graduated high school. It ended up not happening. So the next logical step for me, because again, I came from a slightly different background, fortunately for me, I was able to come to college in the States because I had the educational background, where most kids, they might have been just tied up and forced to sign for the team, or just, that's the end of the line at that point. So I had that option open. It ended up working out for me. I had great help from a foundation that used to pair up, kids from Latin America and into U.S. colleges. And that was the first stepping stone. But then getting drafted was like, okay, it's getting real now. I am a professional. Yeah. Once you get drafted and signed, now you're in the professional ranks. And just like you said, unlike football and other sports where they might have one, backup team, in baseball, I mean, there might be some changes going on now, but when I signed, there was 7 levels.
Jeez.
Underneath the major league teams. So
wow.
AA and countless others. So I got to skip the first 2 because coming out of college, you come in a little older than a high school kid or undrafted free agent out of Latin America. So I got to skip the lowest 2 levels, but I still have 5 to climb. So, but now my professional dream is starting, and it's time to, put put your nose to the ground and grind away.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You're listening to the Kicks Factory podcast. I'm here with Jose Bautista. That's amazing, and just hearing that is awesome. I can only imagine what that feels like to get drafted. So in 2004, you get called up by the Baltimore Orioles. I'm sure that was just a dream come true, especially as you just told us about the different layers and levels that you had to go through in order to get to the majors. Two questions. What did was that debilitating to you to see that you had those levels in front of you that you had to cut through in order to get to the majors? And then once you finally broke through that and made it to the majors, how satisfying was that?
I think, the ecosystem of baseball kind of shapes you up to have the qualities that you need to succeed in baseball. So knowing that was going to be an uphill battle kind of makes you adapt. If you don't adapt, understanding that you have to go through all those levels to make it, you just won't get there. And if you get there, you won't stay there, So I looked at it as a challenge, and I looked at it as step by step. I'm here today and I have 5 to go, and I'll do what I have to do here today to get to the next one. And when I get there, I'll do the same. And when I get there, until eventually I get up to the big leagues. And obviously I wasn't born with that type of mentality. I just was fortunate enough to have great people around me.
Yeah, and just knew what you had to do. That's awesome.
And they communicated well, and they wanted the best for me. And I was, receptive to their guidance and constructive criticism, and sometimes the foot in the bud that you need, to mature at an accelerated pace and grow as a man and just become a true professional and do what you need to do to continue to get better. In baseball, it's a shock to have those expectations immediately. And especially when you get drafted and get a little bit of, an investment made in you when you get a decent sized signing bonus. So then it just became the grind. And after that, like you said, in 2004, so it took me about 3.5 years getting called up, as a dream come true, a roller coaster of emotions. You just get a little bit emotional. You call the people that were there from day one with you, your parents and all your friends. And it's a tremendous joy. And you feel like you kind of got there, and now the goal becomes something else. How do I stay here for the rest of my career? So there's always that next thing to go after.
That's awesome. Do you remember where you were when you got drafted?
When I got drafted,
when you got called up. Sorry.
Well, I'll tell you both. When I got drafted, I was back in the little small town in Florida, in the Panhandle, where I went to junior college. It's called Marianna, Florida. I was staying around there for the early parts of the summer because I knew I had a chance to get drafted. And when I got drafted, I was there. So when I got called up to the big leagues, was the last day of spring training. I was with the Orioles, but we had an exhibition game in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and immediately after the game, the manager pulled me in the office and gave me the great news.
Wow, that's awesome. That's amazing and great to hear. Such a different story than you hear from other athletes. I had no idea. We never really talked about any of this stuff, but it's really awesome to learn this about you and your unique sort of journey and the support system that you had. I think that's the biggest thing that I take from your story is the support that you had. You can never go wrong with too much support. So we're going to take a little bit of a break and continue to pay those bills. When we come back, we're going to jump into Jose's fashionable side and talk some shoes. So you're listening to the Kicks Factory. I'm here with Jose Bautista, and we'll be back in a minute.
Hello and welcome to R&R on Sports.
This is a very special day. We've got some very special young ladies joining us here. We want to hear about sports from a lady's perspective.
I'm just happy happy to see athletes utilizing their platforms to amplify what we do on a day-to-day basis.
We've seen, Jesse Owens, his race and the political implications. Jim Brown has been vocal. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali. We can go on and on and on about athletes entering into the political and having a positive impact.
44 was a huge advocate for sport. So we'll see.
I don't think Biden's gonna be shooting ball in the track, though.
No, he strikes me as the golf type.
Kadzukian. Check out all your Kadzukian favorites now. Download the Kadzukian app, available on Android and iOS.
Welcome everybody back to the Kicks Factory show. I'm your host Omar Bailey, and I'm here with Jose Bautista. So I want to change directions a little bit from your career and kind of jump into some of you're a fashionable guy. And I remember the one of the first times we connected in New York, and we were in the fashion district, and you were telling me about going to some of the garment stores and looking at fabrics to get custom suits made and things like that. And I was just really fascinated by that. Can you tell me a little bit about sort of where your interest for fashion and dressing? You're a dapper guy. You'd always sort of, always looking fresh, coming to the games and whatnot. Tell me a little bit about where that came from.
Again, something that I must have picked up at a young age, but now I look back at pictures, right, when I was a kid, and I look at how I used to dress and all that, and, I was paying attention, and I had people that I looked up to, and I was influenced by fashion and media and just like everybody else, like music and the movies. So I guess you just try to present yourself well, and you kind of try to express yourself with the way you dress and try to kind of show people, give them a little window to who you are with how you kind of dress yourself and how you look and how you conduct yourself on a day-to-day basis. And it changes, obviously. I feel like for myself, it changes constantly, depending on my mood and depending on, weather and where my mind's at. And sometimes you feel a little bit more conservative and you try to keep your, not draw too much attention to yourself. Sometimes, that might flip-flop or turn 180 degrees. So that's kind of how I've looked at it in the past. But yeah, I like to pay attention. I like I have my taste. And I think that I try to be cognizant of what I believe looks good on me and what fits my style. So I just try to keep those things in mind when I just go to my closet and grab something and when I go shopping.
That's awesome. Did you guys have a dress code in the MLB, or how did that work?
We did when I first started, and some teams had more strict than others. Some teams just had slack and button down shirts, kind of like business attire. Some other teams had suits, especially on the road, just to be truly old school professional. You look at picture of Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and Joe DiMaggio, they wore suits to the park every day.
Yeah.
But now and throughout my career, it changed a lot, and it got a lot more relaxed, and they allow people to kind of just show their personality a little bit more. And, I think the enhancement of the connection with the fans had a little bit to do with that. And fans started to voice, their about, understanding who these guys are that are dressed in uniform and doing crazy fun stuff on the playing field. They want to get to know them personally, and it's a little easier to do when people are allowed to kind of dress up the way that they want.
Absolutely. And that's great to hear. And I know, I feel like today too, like, the NBA is really like setting the tone and taking it to a whole nother level too, with like fashion shows during All-Star Weekend and all sorts of stuff. And I see a lot more of that sort of bleeding into baseball. As well. I think of like, someone like a Jose Reyes, who's like a little bit more sort of with like the streetwear. Like I'd follow him on Instagram and sort of see his style. I'm sure you know him, and his cars with the crazy rims and the bright colors and everything. And you see that sort of, it's almost like it matches the style that the person has on the field when they're playing as well, right? So it's really cool to see that, and to your point, it does make the fans more engaged and more interested, and it's just great when you have, you know, an organization like MLB or the NBA who support that and let you guys be the individuals that you are.
Yeah, 100%. And now showing up to the park or the arena becomes part of the, you know, the day coverage of the media, because people want to know, oh, when these guys show up to work, like, what do they look like? How do they drive in? Like, and now it's, you know, there's a camera following people when you show up, and it becomes a topic of conversation. Did you see what so-and-so was wearing? What was this guy wearing? You know, I know that when it first started, and I used to see some of Westbrook's outfits, I was like, wow, he's got a really eccentric style, and he fluctuates a lot with, you know, with how he dresses, but it's cool to see, you know, that that's part of who he is, and it's showing his personality, and it's it creates that kind of conversation piece because it makes you wonder.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's cool to see, and as a fan, it's really fun to watch, to see how these guys are showing up to the arenas and whatnot. So I want to jump into something else. So I remember in 2006, Stephon Marbury started the Starberry sneaker brand, the first, like, I think it was like a $15 sneaker, and that he sold with, I believe it was a partnership with Stephen Barry's, the Midwest retailer. And the reason why I bring that up is because I think that really started this, got athletes thinking about getting into the shoe business independently, as opposed to working with being signed by a brand and doing their own thing. I was lucky enough, through my career, to work with a few guys who tried to do, something similar, the Allen Houstons, Gary Sheffields, even Jermaine O'Neal's, Mike Miller's, and many more who wanted to follow in those footsteps. In 2016, you had an idea that you wanted to give a shot to starting your own shoe brand, or having your own cleat for yourself, for children. Can you tell me a little bit about that, and kind of what motivated you to at least want to just even think about the idea?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody. Everybody has their own little things that drive them. I don't know what it was for Marbury or Sheffield, but I know that for me it was a mix of things. So I had a little entrepreneurial vein in me. So that was a project that was extremely interesting in my eyes. I also was an investor and part owner of a baseball equipment manufacturing company, and we made everything but shoes. But what happens is, in the baseball world, when you get an endorsement deal to wear the shoes, normally the company makes other products and they also want you to wear those. And when I was, negotiating and I would bring that up, it was a big negative. So it made companies, at one point not be so enticed in doing shoe deals with me, because then I wouldn't be wearing the rest of their other products. And for me, as an investor, that was a non-starter. I can't be an owner of a company that makes bats and fielding gloves and batting gloves and then wear that somebody else's stuff. So it made it more difficult. So as a solution to that, I did have also some issues with my feet and my ankles. Nothing crazy or chronic, but the little pains and aches that when you play every single day and you play 162 games in 180 days, you try to avoid those, right? So I think it's something that gets talked about amongst players in the baseball world. We feel a little neglected with the development of shoes and technology. It's not the same quality or kind of effort as you see in soccer and basketball. So we feel like our shoes could be a little bit better and better adapted to our sport. So to kind of check all those boxes, I was like, what if I just do it myself? And looking for inspiration, doing my research, I ran across your name in multiple different places, both in the shoe industry and design part of the world, but also on who are the former athletes that have used, companies and resources to kind of do their own thing. So because you kept popping up and you seem pretty reputable, and that you had your stuff together and then you knew what you were doing, I contacted you, and I contacted a few people, but obviously I chose you, and I connected with you better, and it seemed like you knew exactly what you were doing. You understood the process from A to Z, and you could guide me through it, and you had that attitude that you didn't mind educating me and helping me through it while just kind of showing me the way. So that's why we ended up working together. And to be quite honest, things happen in your career at different times that are out of your control that make it more difficult to take on personal projects. And it was unfortunate for me that right when we were about to kind of maybe put the foot to the gas and start going into production and creating the retail product, I ended up getting hurt, getting traded, a bunch of things that I was like at the tail end of my career as well. So it ended up not working out, but to be quite honest, it's something that's still in the back of my mind, and I get that itch from time to time. So I may pick up the phone again, and you might be hearing from me from soon.
Absolutely. That sounds great. And thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it. You're listening to the Kicks Factory Show. I'm here with Jose Bautista, and we're going to take a little bit of a break and come back and continue the conversation about shoes, cleats, and all of the above. So we'll be right back in a minute.
Hello and welcome to R&R on Sports.
This is a very special day. We've got some very special young ladies joining us here.
We want to hear about sports from a lady's perspective.
I'm just happy to see athletes utilizing their platforms to amplify what we do on a day-to-day basis.
We've seen, Jesse Owens, his race and the political implications. Jim Brown has been vocal. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali. We can go on and on and on about athletes entering into the political and having a positive impact.
44 was a huge advocate for sport. So we'll see.
I don't think Biden's gonna be shooting ball in the track, though.
No, he strikes me as the golf type.
Kadzukian. Check out all your Kadzukian favorites now. Download the Kadzukian app, available on Android and iOS.
Welcome back to the Kicks Factory Show. I'm your host, Omar Bailey, with my special guest, Jose Bautista. So I want to, well, first I appreciate everything you said in the last segment, and it's the timing sucked with your injury and just sort of being at the tail end of your career, but it's still a beautiful story that like this, this professional baseball player who's on this stage wanted to even give it a shot and try and start your own shoe brand and create your own cleat. So I'm very fascinated by that, and you were just such a gentleman through the process too. I really did feel like it was a great fit between the two of us, and you were so open and to being educated and learning about the process. So with that said, I remember us going through that design process for the cleat, and number one on your list was comfort. And because I remember you referred to your feet a bit, and you told me, like, listen, I'm standing on my feet out there all day in the outfield, like I need to make sure that I have that what's on my feet is comfortable as I'm standing up throughout the games. And I remember, we went through that process, and we designed the shoe. The upper I thought was beautiful, with sort of that white swoopy line, and it had this nice sort of like pace to it in terms of the flow of it. But it was the sole that we were trying to work through. And I remember, I used what we use in the industry. Sometimes we use existing soles before we make the investment into opening up a full mold. And I remember you invited me to a game after the first sample. And this was like, we started, talking right before spring training. And I think this was in like midsummer, like maybe June, July, when the first prototype had gotten done. and I get those to you, and you guys are playing the Yankees, and you invite me to the game, and were gracious enough to let me come down onto the field during BP and while you were shagging balls and whatnot, and you had the shoe on, you were giving me some feedback, and we're like, this, it's a little like I feel this sort of like, poking here and whatnot. And I just remember having this like real nervous feeling like, oh man, I like, maybe you shouldn't play in the shoes right now while we work through this. Can you tell me a little bit about just kind of what that process was like for you on the receiving end, just kind of getting this information and, and how you felt when you got the samples and, just like, like what was that like for you going through something so new like that and developing a baseball cleat?
Yeah, so coming into it, like you mentioned earlier, I was so eager and I was so ready, and I was like, let's get this done in 6 weeks. Obviously unrealistic now that I understand the process better. But yeah, fast forward into getting the first samples, I remember that I wanted to check off a few boxes, and I remember telling you, like you said, comfort was number one, functionality was number two, and then style and look was number three. And the functionality, going back to what I said earlier about, feeling that one of the underlying conversations in the baseball world is us, the baseball player athletes, feel like we're neglected somewhat in the shoe development. We play a sport where we need to be super mobile and we need to be able to go in 360 degrees at any moment in time and pivot and turn and rotate. And our shoes most of the time have I believe it's called a shunt. On the inside.
The shank.
The shank.
The shank,
yeah. Sorry. Between the sole and the actual where you put your foot. And, that is restricted to movement significantly. And I remember telling you, I don't want that thing in there. And you were like, well, we'll figure that out. And I remember, though, the first sample did not have one. And I was like, dude, I feel the ground as I'm pushing off, which is great. So on top of the added comfort that you figured out how to, accomplish that in the shoe. Mm-hmm. And I remember that, we created a last that was ultra comfortable. It felt like the shoe was a glove on my foot. Mm-hmm. And then having the feeling of the flexibility in the sole, but also sturdy enough to have that, to push off, but feel the ground and my foot bend as if I'm almost running barefoot was life-changing for me. And going back to what you said, it's like, maybe you shouldn't be playing. I was like, screw this. I'm playing with this thing. It's better than anything I've ever put my foot into on the playing field.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
But obviously it was the first run at a sample. So the shoe ended up, or the sample ended up not lasting too many games. Mm-hmm. But I also beat it up. I wore it for batting practice and game. Mm-hmm. And I think about 2 weeks into it started, kind of showing signs of deterioration. So, but at that time, you almost had the second sample almost to me. And it was really after that where we kind of had a more finished product, and I was able to play the rest of the season with it.
Right, exactly. We were able to sort of fine tune it and get to a place. And then I remember we got real creative with the materials. You wanted to have like some snake skin on it, and we got the Dominican flag on there, the Canadian flag on there as well. Did you just tell me a little bit about, and I know we talked a little bit about it, I think early on in the segment about, or early on in the show about your love for fashion and materials, and did that play a role into that too as well? Just kind of thinking about how you're going to present yourself on the field.
Yeah, you want to put your thumbprint on it. You want to leave a little bit of you on the design process and then on the finished product. But also you want to differentiate. You want to do things that everybody talks about. Oh, I wish people would do this, and I wish this company would do that. And now that I'm in control and I can, screw it. It costs a little more. I don't care. Let's do it, because it's going to show who I am and what I like, and also enhances that connection with the fans. Because again, when you're putting yourself out there and creating, a cool product to be displayed on the field, that people can identify with and start conversations with and say, oh, look at these shoes. And I remember telling you, hey, man, I want to create a versatile shoe in the sense of I want to make sure that we can create the same upper into a lifestyle shoe and a training shoe and the performance shoe that I wear as a cleat. So we were on the right path. I mean, again, it didn't work out when you look at it from creating a retail product, but I think we accomplished a lot of things. And again, if I pick it up, we're gonna hit the ground running.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You are listening to the Kicks Factory show. I'm here with Jose Bautista. That's great to hear. So I remember back in working with Chef, and we made some samples and he got them in, and I remember he would tell me stories about I'd have the shoes in my locker and like one of my teammates would grab them and whatnot. And I never got to ask you this question. What did your teammates think of the shoe and some of your opposing players or friends in the league?
First of all, they thought I was a pioneer, or like Christopher Columbus setting out to the open waters for the first time. They're like, you're doing what? I'm like, it's been done before. You guys just don't remember because it's been a while. But so I thought that was funny. But then they are like, you had the crowd that likes to kind of take a jab at you and critique it, but also the crowd is like curious and it's like, oh, let me see this and let me hold it and can I put it on and can I try it out? And obviously I had more of those than the big brand guys that are like, oh, well, I'm getting 6-figure checks every year to wear this brand and I have their support and all this other. I'm like, listen, everybody's different. We all go down a different path. But what the guys that were curious about it, immediately positive feedback. I love the materials. How'd you do this? How did your guy accomplish that? It's so comfortable. I can't believe I can run so well in it. It was overwhelming, the amount of positive feedback. So if you get that type of buy-in from the pros that are expected to perform every day, and they can vouch and validate what you're doing, that's a good place to start a brand.
Absolutely. And those same people who were hating on it are the same ones that will end up buying it too as well. I've learned that lesson many times in some of the other things that I've been involved in. But that's a great point that you bring up too, because I feel like probably one of the things that I would imagine one of the things that was really impressive to some of your peers that you played with was that you were just doing this on your own. It's easy. It's probably a lot easier to take a check from a brand and wear their shoes and whatnot. But the fact that you went through this process, I would imagine they were just really, really impressed by that, that you're doing. And clearly you were already in business with your baseball equipment brand as well. So that was one of the things I was really impressed with you too, as well, was just your IQ already for product development. Like you were ambitious about creating the shoe, but you also knew to scale it back and kind of let the process unfold itself, and had faith that we were going to get to a place where you could have a wearable product. Can you tell me about maybe some a lesson that you learned or so from just going through that process, and how do you compare the process of developing a baseball cleat to some of the other products that you've worked on in the past?
Oh man, exactly that. Get the feedback from the pro and the subject matter expert. Let them guide you.
Yeah.
And my involvement in the process, and try to stick with it. Do what I do, let you do what you do. And my big thing was, what do I want? What do I need? And how do I put my personality to it? But other than that, I got to let you do you, because you know what you're talking about. I don't know. I didn't know and still don't know a lot about the shoe manufacturer and design business. That's what you do. So if I try to overtake your role, then I'm just, kind of shooting myself in the foot per se.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot, and I've used a lot of the elements that I learned from the process with you. That was my first creative process, into then later creating a line of jeans that I did with Silver Jeans Company in Canada. And then I did a watch with Hublot that I ended up using a lot of learning experience. I did a jacket with Canada Goose in Canada that I ended up using all that experience from. So it helped me expedite and understand the relationship between the creative and the designers, and what can you do and what is just unreasonable because it doesn't make business sense, because it's not going to have market appeal, it's not going to be functional. It was my first step towards understanding how the design process works.
That's awesome, and I'm happy I could have I played a small role in that. You were like I said, you were a gentleman the entire time throughout the entire process. Most people think that that creating shoes and getting into the shoe business is easy, but don't realize the time, the commitment, the resources, that are required, in order to pull that off. And I remember, us having these honest conversations about it. And like I said, you were, you really absorbed that information, and it's coming through in this conversation. What's some advice that you could give to, whether it's an athlete or a designer, who just might be thinking of starting their own brand, whether it's shoes or getting into product or, anything at all? Like, what are some of the things you've learned and some advice that you would like to share?
I would say, do something about it, whether it's picking up the phone, doing research, thinking about it and dreaming about it is good, but until you actually take some actionable steps towards accomplishing that, you will never know what you can uncover and find. And by having conversations, by doing your research and taking the steps to at least educate yourself, you'll at least know within your possibilities if you can kind of pull this off or not, and how much effort you want to put into it. And if it's something that you can dedicate a certain amount of hours a week to do. But my advice after saying that is, it's 100% worth it. Just by learning and the educational process, like, I guarantee you that people have to put themselves to at least a couple of years of college, or or do at least a year specialized course to know and learn what I learned by going through that process with you. So if you look at it from the investment perspective, it's 100% worth it. Yeah. And then you just know, and when you know, you can't forget. So when you learn things by doing them instead of just reading or talking about them, it's completely different experience. Yeah. And it just creates a whole nother world of possibilities for you as an individual in your life that you never thought were possible. But you got to do something about it. You can't just dream and read and just talk. You actually have to take true steps to doing it. And I know that the hurdle for a lot of people can be financial, but believe me, you got to look at it as an investment, and you will reap the benefits, whether you end up with a retail product or not. It's going to be a learning experience, and when you have information and education, it makes you powerful.
No, that's beautiful. You are listening to the Kicks Factory Show. I'm here with Jose Bautista. You just said, what you learn, you can't forget. I love that quote. And I would like to add one other thing to what you said too, as well, in terms of a requirement or to add to that advice. And I think, as a professional athlete, you were extremely humble in the process as well. And I'd like to throw that in the bucket as well, is have a little humility through that process too, as well, because you had to be, in order to take a step back and let the pros do their job the same way that, someone trusted you to do your job on the field of play. So I really appreciate that. But I want to, take a moment before we wrap up here and hear a little bit about what you're doing today. You mentioned it earlier. You got a few sticks in the fire. So, tell me a little bit about what's going on. What are some of the things you're up to?
Nothing that's too finalized, but, I've dedicated a lot of time, like I said, to becoming I was always a full-time dad, but my time commitments were different when I was an active athlete. Now that I have more free time, I get to spend more time with my daughters. So that takes up obviously a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
I've picked up a couple of different, athletic activities just to spend my time. I've started road cycling and mountain biking and playing, pickup soccer. So that's exposing me to different type of competition. I felt that void and I had to fill it somehow, and I'm using those sports to do it. I've also kind of taken a deeper dive into managing my finances and the wealth that I was able to accumulate while I was playing. And being part of that process has been eye-opening, because when you're preoccupied with your money-making, job, you rely on your expert advisors. And I still do that today, but I'm way more involved. And that takes some time too. But if you remember, I mentioned the baseball equipment company that I used to be a part of. We ended up selling last year. We had a very nice exit.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. Almost a year ago now. So now that I'm out in the market, I guess, again, I've been reached out by a couple of different companies, and I'm exploring those possibilities and a couple of different personal projects and how I can enhance. I have my own foundation. We're pivoting on how we're, helping kids. Our motto and the way that we try to assist kids has been kind of like the same way that I got help in the past when I came from the Dominican to college. It's enabling, student athletes to pursue their higher education at college. So I was helping, and I still am. We have 2 kids left, but throughout the life cycle of that part of the foundation, we ended up helping around 70 kids from different parts of the world come to college to be student athletes, which was great. We've only had 1 not graduate. The 2 that are not, the other 2 that are still in school will be graduating right now this spring. So I feel pretty good about what we were able to accomplish on that. And like I said, we're pivoting. We're gonna shift in the way that we operate, because internally, the managing of the foundation did become somewhat of too big of a scale to manage. So we're changing our approach, but now I'm putting all my time into that as well. So I'm busy, but
sounds like it.
But it's exciting, busy, and productive busy.
That's great. And I could just tell by the smile on your face, you're real passionate about it. That's unbelievable what you're doing for the kids with as student athletes and getting them educated. It's awesome when you hear, you're taking sort of learnings from your story and trying to impact people in a similar way. That's really cool. Last question before we wrap up. So knowing what you know now about whether it's about baseball, family, business, product development, if you could go back in time and give your younger self any kind of advice, do you have anything in mind, or what do you think it would be?
I'd probably say, don't be so hard on yourself, and be more open. I learned this before I met you, but not as early as I should have. Be more open to suggestions and be more open to comments from people that are trying to help you. When you're successful, sometimes it makes you not be a great listener, and you take in that advice from a productive kind of mindset. I would say that I was not necessarily a closed mindset person before, but when I started enjoying success, it kind of let me put my guard down and be more receptive to feedback, and became more of a growth mindset person. So just always have your ears open and listen to what people have to say, and look at the positives instead of the negatives, and it'll accelerate your growth. It'll make you, understand yourself better, which will then help you navigate through life much easier.
Wow. No, that was great. And that clearly speaks to your character and being able to sort of slow down and be receptive to information. You're very unique. Not a lot of people do that, especially those who've had the success that you've had. it goes without saying you are a class act. It's been amazing having you on the show, Jose. You still continue to amaze me, and I'm just, always been so impressed and looked up to you from the moment that we met. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. This was a fantastic conversation. I learned some new things about you that I didn't know before, and this is really gonna sit with me, and I hope all the listeners enjoy it. And maybe one day we might bring the shoe back. We might do something else. Who knows? But anything is possible in the future. But thank you so much again for being on the show today. Really,
thank you. The feeling is mutual, and like I said, I got some things working that are not final. But if that opportunity comes, you best believe that I'll be placing that phone call and we'll be creating a shoe.
Absolutely, sounds good. You are listening to the Kicks Factory Show. I'm your host, Omar Bailey, and our super special guest, Jose Bautista, Joey Bats. Make sure you follow him on Instagram and just keep up with the things that he's doing. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.